Yeah, and I'm not gonna do that. All right, I'm at 0-0.
All right, ready.
Same here.
Damn.
Win.
I forgot I was on push to talk. I'm good to go.
Oh, okay. Do the thing.
All right, you good to go, Win?
Yeah.
In 3, 2, 1. It was fun to work on this. Play.
Ooh.
Oh, nice. Oh, how timely.
It's difficult enough to make an original iconic
Nice
classic.
beard.
Thank you.
Imagine having to follow it up.
Oh, was this
Well,
during No Shave
in
November?
1989, the cast and crew of
Yeah,
Back to the
something like
Future
that.
reunited for the sequel that wowed audiences on November
Makes you look
22
distinguished.
in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for the 30th anniversary, Time Circuit's on.
The plot picks up seconds from when the last movie left off, but there are notable differences in this scene. While it's pretty much shot for shot, we see the Doc hesitating when Marty questions what he and Jennifer are like in the future, and the delivery of
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
has a different pitch and cadence. And you can see that Michael has aged a little with the 4-year difference between part 1 and 2. What I love about the future that is depicted
Don't forget
in this
the new
sequel is
actress.
that, unlike other movies from the 80s I like get to Blade that. Runner and 1984's The Terminator, where the future is very dark, gritty, and dystopian, the 2015 that Marty and Doc arrive in at 4:29 p.m. October 21st is very happy, bright, colourful, and technologically advanced.
From automated service in Cafe 80s, to autonomous vehicles, to widescreen TVs, and video conferencing.
Bob and Bob had no real way of predicting the future, and they just decided to have fun with these concepts, which quite a few did eventually come to pass. More on that later.
The pacing and flow still has what made it work from before, but now it plays with the perils of time travel.
Marty sees the consequences of what happens when information is brought from the future to the past, when senior Biff Tannen goes back to November 12, 1955, and hands the Grey Sports Almanac to his teenage self. This is only realised when he, Doc, and Jennifer travel back to 1985 and already see there have been some changes.
Biff is now rich, powerful, and corrupt and married to Lorraine. George McFly is nowhere to be seen. And Hill Valley is turned into a nightmare scene as Biff has turned the town hall into his own personal address and casino.
They did revisit the first movie, in which they worked around the events of the original without Marty and Doc directly interfering with said events as to not cause a paradox. Because Marty from the original would have missed the event with the clock tower, would have never gone back to the future, and it would have resulted in a time paradox that would have ripped apart the fabric of time, causing a chain reaction, destroying the universe, or at least the local known galaxy.
As good as this movie is, it did repeat the plots from the first movie, with Marty unwittingly having himself involved with a member of Biff's family and using his wits to evade them. He was fortunate enough to escape Biff's gang in 1955 by avoiding the manure truck, and seemingly just as lucky to avoid Griff's hoverboard gang as he jumped into the water and then crashed into the clock tower.
Something very familiar about all this.
You know the old phrase, those who don't learn from their history are doomed to repeat it? Well, that becomes so for Marty in part 3, when he travels to 1885 and doesn't fare so well against Mad Dog Tannen.
It also introduced a new story arc for Marty that just felt like it came out of nowhere, with him losing his judgment anytime someone called him chicken. I suppose from one perspective it gave him something new to learn aside from learning that there are consequences to actions with the almanac. It's not a horrible arc, but it's just one of those that felt weird.
As with the previous entry, it gives away a lot of seemingly useless information but comes right back up in part 3. For example, George found out in the street after Lorraine's father knocked him out with the car, and the night of the storm which struck the clock tower and why it hadn't worked for 30 years. In part 2, it's alluded to why Marty Sr.'s hand was broken due to an accident in 1985, and Doc wanting to visit the Old West and discover one of the great mysteries of the universe. Women. And Marty using a bulletproof vest in part 3 as he watches Biff and his female company watching an old Clint Eastwood western. Fox reprises his role as the quirky and lovable Marty McFly, and seemingly like he only walked off of the set of the first Back to the Future 5 minutes before walking on to part 2, as he's in character with Marty's quirks and traits. Particularly when they land in 2015 and he wants to see the future for himself that he wouldn't see naturally for another 30 years.
What Michael brings to the table this time as Marty is showing how the character is seduced by the prospect of potential wealth by bringing back an almanac that would tell him the next 15 years of sporting events that he could make a fortune from. Fox portrays remorse and regret flawlessly when it dawns upon him that his actions are the direct result of 1985 existing due to Biff doing what he wanted to do.
As Marty Jr., he acts like a wimp agreeing to Griff's demands until his father steps in, as they're basically a spitting image of each other. As Marlene McFly, he's only used in brief scenes and is only around the dinner table having a hydrated pizza from Pizza Hut. Lloyd effortlessly steps back into the role of the inventor of a time-traveling DeLorean. His performance is that of joy and regret this time round. Joy is seeing the future history being altered of Griff going to jail and not Marty Jr. His regret is when he realizes that old Biff took the time machine back to the past, gave the sports almanac to his teenage self, and then sees that Hill Valley has become less than desirable.
An amusing moment comes when he is essentially having a conversation with himself when his 1955 counterpart is making preparations for the clock tower experiment for later on that evening, on Saturday, November 12, 1955.
Just like the two principal cast members, Tom steps right back into character as the butthead of the franchise. Just like part 1's,
so why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
he continues to mess it up.
Oh, that's about as funny as a screen door on a battleship.
Screen door on a submarine, you dork.
Tom went through the most counterparts in this movie as he plays Biff 1985, Biff 1985A, 1955 Biff, his teenage self, Old Biff, and Griff.
Whereas in part 1 he portrays what a stereotypical high school bully could be, in this you could see the fully realized potential of his corrupt side as he uses his wealth to have a stranglehold on Hill Valley, owning the law as well. He plays the scene beautifully between his teenage and senior selves seamlessly, like it's a real conversation happening in real time. He might play a butthead, but the actor is a true pro. Leia has limited screen time in this sequel, but like Tom, she plays 3 different incarnations of herself, from her adult 1985A counterpart, her senior self in 2015, and back to play her teenage version in 1955. She turns in another good performance as a supporting player, although she would have more screen time in part 3 as Marty's great-great-grandmother. Elizabeth replaces Claudia Wells as Marty's girlfriend, and taking into account that the two look strikingly similar to each other, it doesn't hurt the movie. Claudia had to drop out the sequel due to personal family issues. Shu portrays Jennifer well and has more screen time than Claudia's portrayal did, and has a look of shock about her when she encounters her future self. Although truth be told, I think if we saw ourselves as a senior version of ourselves, I think we would have that sense to faint. The effects aren't just with the DeLorean this time. There was an amazing use of trick photography where one actor would be able to play 2 roles on screen in the same shot. 2 examples of this are with Marty interacting with his son at Cafe 80s, where it's Michael playing 2 roles, but the editing is done so flawlessly that you'd swear blind that they cloned Michael J. Fox. Same circumstances with Christopher Lloyd essentially having a conversation with himself, where Doc 1955 is asking Doc 1985 for a 3/4 inch wrench, and the editing is once more perfect as it looks like Christopher was doubled within the same scene. And now, for the DeLorean itself. The time machine went through some changes compared to the original. In the first movie, the car's time circuits were powered with plutonium in order to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of power, akin to that of a bolt of lightning, in order for the car to break through the time barrier. At the end of Part 1, the car had a Mr. Fusion reactor added to the rear, removing the need for plutonium cells, as this could be now powered with trash in order to generate the power required. And the car could fly, as Doc had a hover conversion added when he got to 2015 originally. Michael Chaffee played a part in building the DeLorean in making the car look as though it had been made in a garage, working with whatever the Doc could find based on his budget. Michael is also the same man that built the original Kit from Knight Rider, and anybody that's ever seen Kit and his dashboard knows of the sheer detail that Michael put into the car. I've met the man in person, and he is one of the most humble and approachable human beings you're ever likely to meet.
For a movie now celebrating its 30th anniversary, the special and visual effects hold up so well that you forget that this movie was made at the end of the 80s.
Alan Silvestri returns for composing duties for the follow-up, and he did not disappoint. He still brought the cheery and optimistic themes that were used in the original, but he's able to bring a slightly darker tone to the flick when you see the 1985 A scenes reflecting the altered timeline that our protagonists find themselves in.
I think my most favourite uses of the score is when you see Marty rising back up to the roof on the hood of the DeLorean, much to Biff's surprise, and seeing Doc pull Marty out of harm's way at the end of the road tunnel, which was also used in Robert Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit. For me, you cannot do a Back to the Future movie without Alan Silvestri's timeless score. He really helps to give the movie a lot of heart when you hear his work operating in the background. 3 decades since the follow-up was released to cinema goers, it has reached beloved status from TV reruns and releases onto DVD, and for the 25th and 30th anniversary, onto Blu-ray.
It's not without its fault, as I mentioned earlier. Some did find the introduction of Marty reacting angrily to being called chicken like it came out of left field. This is something that gets resolved in Part 3, but that's for another time. And history repeating itself from the first movie, with Marty finding himself in a predicament with one of Biff's relatives. It's still cool to watch, but you feel like you've seen it before.
Aside from the philosophical aspects of the pros and cons of time travel, it did turn out that 26 years later, they did get a lot of their predictions right.
Hoverboards. This did happen, but only over areas where it was magnetized underneath so that the boards could hover above selected ground. Widescreen TVs. These have been around since the mid-2000s, as TV stations were changing their aspect ratio from 4:3 to 16:9, or widescreen to put it simply. Digital devices that distract people at dinner. Granted, it's not as fantastical as the VR goggles that the McFly family wears at the dinner table, but
VR!
devices from phones to tablets do distract families at the dinner table. Video conferencing, although this was already predated with Stingray, Thunderbird, Star Trek, and Knight Rider. This is the means of being able to communicate with others whilst using a live video feed. This has been achieved through satellite connections, webcams, Skype, which was a major breakthrough, and now onto something as minuscule as smartphones with FaceTime. I prefer video chat personally. 80s nostalgia taking over, from fashion trends of leg warmers returning to movie series like the Ninja Turtles and Transformers. 3D movies coming into play. The shark still looks fake. 3D movies have been around for years, but only started to get taken more seriously in the late 2000s when the likes of Avatar had presentations shown in 3D, which did give it a new dimension on how to experience movies. Particularly since the glasses were upgraded from the paper-based versions to actual glasses made from plastic. Do try and watch Tangled in 3D.
Seriously.
That was mind-bending with the floating torches scene. Self-taught Nike Air Mags. What seemed like a high-tech fantasy that was only limited to movie magic became a reality on October 21, 2015, when Michael J. Fox revealed to the world the first working pair of self-tying Nike Air Mags
Oh,
on the
that's
Jimmy
rad.
Kimmel Show. Biometrics. Although this was predicted in Knight Rider, with Michael only being allowed to gain entry to Kit with fingerprint pads recognizing his digits, Biometrics is a way of machines being able to recognize the user that is encoded with their fingerprints. This is also used in retinal recognition systems so that the user is looking to gain entry is the one that is listed on the system. Hydrated pizza. As ideal as this would be, I'm kinda glad it didn't, because hydrated food does exist, but nowhere near as picture perfect as Part 2 made it out to be. So, hydrated food did come true, but not in the most desirable manner. The automated delivery service from Cafe 80s did inspire for Pizza Hut to develop an interactive table in which customers could order their meals at the table. And McDonald's have a similar method in place when you're able to order your food via a touchscreen and then proceed to either collect your order from the counter or have it delivered to a designated table.
And what they got wrong?
Flying cars. As much of an amazing breakthrough in engineering as this would be,
I don't think we're gonna
considering
get that
the
till
dangerous
2030.
drivers we have these days, well, I believe this segment from end of year 2015 will explain all.
Let's see, what else did they get wrong?
Flying cars, technically.
No skyways. There's no skyways.
Although if you think about it, I'm actually glad that we don't have flying cars, because considering the hundreds of thousands of awful, dangerous drivers that are out there, imagine them in the sky.
Oh, that is terrible.
Yeah.
That will end up leading to the post-apocalyptic future.
You don't say.
Imagine people like recreating Star Wars battles with that.
Stay on target. It's Ricky. Don't get cocky now.
Use the full Sabuke.
This one.
Fax machines still being used predominantly. Fax machines
The
are
end of
still
year
around,
panel was
but
very
considering
different
how
back
people
then.
have email unable to upload via high-speed internet.
It was a pre
machines
SKL
need
world.
Massive use of fax.
Mm-hmm.
The fashion trend from Griff's gang. The two ties. I really don't need to go into detail why I'm glad this never caught on. I mean, just look at
You
it.
say that!
The Chicago Cubs
Just why?
won the World Series, but a year out of its prediction.
2020,
They won in
the
2016.
double ties come into
This was
fashion. It's like,
probably
no!
the most outlandish and outrageous prediction.
Fashion revolution will come, lids.
Because I don't
No,
think
it will
anyone
not.
was
I will
predicting that
not
this would
allow
come to
this.
pass. Alas, they only made it to the semis that year, losing out to the Florida Marlins.
Like its predecessor, it has more than stood the test of time. As Bob Gale said, parents saw this movie when they were kids, they show it to their kids, it just keeps on going. Back to the Future Part 2 is something that will be talked about long after the cast and crew and we are long gone. They just don't make movies like this anymore. I'm MJ Knight, and we are out of time.
Ba 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 ba.
Wait for it.
Damn right on the dock.
Hey, I'm there!
Great Scott!
Yee! I get the McFly title.
Night's out of time. Yes, I love it.
Movie.
It's beautiful.
plug-in.
You did a good job.
Fantastic
Really
work, my
good.
friend.
Thank you. I just want to check the comments section in a moment. Oh, God. Dan goes, so is everyone in the Tannen family tree just genuinely bad people? Yes.
Always.
Where are the other Jaws movies? Well, getting late, folks. I'm off for the night. Keep well, all of you. Thanks, Aaron. That took a while to get done, and the credits surprisingly took longer than expected because I was always finding new and other references to add in there. So I'm like, okay, gotta redo that. After like the 6th or 7th reiteration, I'm like, no, fuck it. No more. It's fine as it is. If I have to add anything, I'll leave it in the description. No more.
Yeah, don't be like the don't be like that one animator who spent like 26 years on an animated movie only to have it taken away from him because he was too much of a perfectionist for his own good.
Richard Williams.
Yep, Richard Williams and The Thief and the Cobbler.
Nah, I just kept the review as clean and simple as possible. I mean, some have asked during the writing, why didn't you focus on why Crispin Glover wasn't there? And I'm like, I just want to, cover all that you need to know about the second movie, which will then set up the review for part 3 for next May, because that's when that was originally released in 1990, so get into that. And wow, you don't get too many opportunities to do a 30th anniversary review, so you only ever get one shot at it. So I'm considering how influential and inspiring that movie has been to so many fans, scientists, engineers, and what have you. You gotta treat it with respect. And also because I knew I would be crucified if I got that one wrong. So that's another season done for that review series. So I would have released it 2 weeks ago, but I was always finding things, just to add to it until I got to the point where I'm like, nope, that's it, no more. Leave it as it is. It's surprising how many things they actually did get right with that movie. Although we're glad that flying cars never came to be.
Yep.
Thank God for that.
Well, it's like I said, like Kaiju said, that would have led to the post-apocalyptic future.
Yeah.
Yep.
It would have been Mad Max in the skies.
Stay on target.
You can't tell me that's not going to happen.
It brings death from above a whole new meaning.
That's why I had to include that segment from end of year 2015, which I knew Kaiju would get a chuckle out of.
Yeah, hard to believe that that's now like almost half a decade ago now.
Yep.
Fuck.
I don't know if I'll keep that particular credits template as a new regular thing. I only brought it in because I thought, why not? Just for this one anniversary, change it up a little bit. Apart from that, I like the clean and simpler look it had too, as opposed to the gold blocky font that I use with the usual template.